Today I was able to work on one of my favorite bonsai with some of my favorite people. And I want to thank Carmen Leskoviansky for giving me the opportunity. Carmen is the curator of bonsai at the Matthaei Botanical Gardens collection at the University of Michigan. She has a wonderful crew of consultants and helpers, and one of them is Jack Wikle, who was my first bonsai mentor and still the most important. He's a man who's forgotten more than I've ever learned, and it was great to see him. Cyril Grum was there, Sinclair, Bill Sloan, a really dedicated group of people who have been the backbone of the collection at Matthaei. So it was great to return to this tree. I originally collected it in the mid-1980s from the driveway of Curtis Smith, who runs the flower market and is also a great bonsai grower. And I demonstrated on this tree over a period of 2 days in Hershey, Pennsylvania in 1987 at the American Bonsai Society convention. So it's been grown as a bonsai for about 30 years. It had a 10 or 12 year break during which time it was grown in a raised bed in my garden when I was unable to take care of bonsai very carefully. And I donated it to Matthaei Botanical Gardens, and since that time, between the volunteers and between Carmen and also David DeGroat, the former curator of bonsai at the Weyerhaeuser collection, who has traveled to Ann Arbor many times to teach, and Dave worked on this tree, I believe, a couple of times, and they've really brought it back to great health. They have restored the original design and even improved it. So what a great day. And in this video, I will show you some of the things that, we'll talk about some of the things that I had to address. The Deadwood on this bonsai, the front of it at the base, was designed in a hurry. And it was designed without really knowing exactly what the potting depth was going to be. And so over time, what happened was that a depression that was designed to sort of flow into soil level turned out to become above the soil level, leaving a saddle and also exposing some decay where there had been soil pressed against the deadwood. So we had to do something. The tree is going into the exhibition soon, and it was going to be potted today, or was potted today, into a nice bonsai pot. And so we had to think very carefully about how to address the decay and also how to address sort of a saddle area where originally it was at soil level, but once the deadwood was exposed, it just didn't look right. So I knew what I needed to do was to create a couple of channels. There was already sort of the beginning of the channels, and all I needed to do was to tie those with the deadwood that had been somewhat rotted below soil level. As we got into it, it turned out that we were in really good shape, because despite the fact that it appeared to be rotten and there had been some loss of wood, mostly it was very hard. Yew is incredibly hard wood, and it's incredibly long-lasting, so all we had was really surface damage. But there were two different levels that were in need of being tied together, and so the work that I did mostly was simply to tie together the upper portion of the deadwood to change the design so that it matched the new potting angle, and to make sure that everything was integrated and attractive. So a good part of the afternoon was taken up with carving, and carving is very boring. It's boring to watch. It's boring to film. It's not boring to do. It's really one of the greatest pleasures I have in doing bonsai, and I I do several things when I'm carving that are worth mentioning. One of them is that if I find a line in the tree, if I find a crack, if I find any indication of movement, I will follow that and enhance it. What that does is it brings out something that was already in the tree, and by exposing something that's naturally there or enhancing it, you get a much better bonsai and a much better result than you could by just dropping your own ideas onto blank wood. The other thing that I find when I'm carving is that there are different densities of wood. Sometimes there's rot, which is very soft, but even where there's no rot, typically there's some guidance that's hidden within the wood. You can feel it when you're using a high-speed cutting tool. And I have found that if I carve away the softer wood and leave the harder wood, quite frequently what I'm doing is exposing some type of shape or some kind of movement that's every bit as good as a nice curving crack, and exposes a structure that was within the tree, was not within my imagination, but simply something that I discovered. So a little bit of that happened today. A lot of it happened when I originally carved the tree. And, overall, I think this is an excellent bonsai. Give it some time to fill in, give it some time for refinement, and it'll be a really great bonsai. Finally, I want to say something about the crew. First Carmen. Carmen came to the curatorship of the bonsai collection without knowing really anything about bonsai, and I think she's done a magnificent job. She's an incredible learner. She listens. She is just great. And then there's Jack Wikle, who has been a permanent fixture on the bonsai scene in Ann Arbor. I assume he founded the club, but if not, he's just always been the backbone of the club. And Jack has also been a very important contributor in many ways to the collection at Matthaei, as a consultant, as a volunteer, as wise counsel. And then there are the others, and I don't want to diminish anyone in particular's role, just to say that Cyril and Jay and Paul Kulesa, who was not there today, and Bill Sloan, these people work really hard on these trees. And the Matthaei collection, if you haven't seen it and you happen to go through Ann Arbor, it's really worth doing. It is becoming a world-class collection.